Hello everyone, and welcome to Redbusters channel. In this video, we look at the latest court ruling that struck down the $100,000 H1B visa fee for someone applying from outside the US. This is a federal judge ruling that just came in today. So we'll look at that. So this is what we'll cover in this video. Look at a quick background and what the judgment was, and why did they really win, what they really looked at, and the whole thing. And also look at it compares to the old decision that was already given. And also we look at what we can expect. So this is what we'll cover. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, do subscribe for getting regular updates as we cover employment-based immigration and green card related things on this channel. Okay, just to give you a background of what this $100,000 fee did. So this $100,000 fee was based on a presidential proclamation by Trump, Mr. President Trump, that was signed in September 19, 2025. Based on that, if you are applying for an H1B petition from outside of the US, right? Not for somebody who's already in the US, then you are subject to this $100,000 fee. And before that, before the $100,000 fee, typically it could cost anywhere around $960 to $7,594 with all of that. But after the proclamation, this actually really added this $100,000 additional fee for somebody applying for H1B and trying to come from outside of the US, right? And this was actually rolled out pretty quickly, and there were FAQs issued and all of that. And the payment website went live. So all of these happened, roughly almost close to a year, very, very close to a year, maybe 3 months or 2 months short of it, right? And it's set to expire at 12 months. So we don't know what will happen after 12 months. So this is the quick background. And there have been a lot of court cases that were filed on that and all of that, right? So today's judgment is actually between the case filed by state of California and other 22 states. This was in by District Court of Massachusetts. So what you see on the screen is the actual judgment. And you can see the policy implementing the proclamation is declared unlawful and is vacated in its entirety. So we look at the specifics of that and what really made the win and things like that and how it works. So just to give the court ruling at a glance, right? So it was decided by the court that the fee declared was an unlawful tax, and that's the fundamental premise for cancellation of that. And it was decided by Judge Leo Sorokin, the U.S. District of Massachusetts in Boston. And it was actually the people who sued this was about 20 states led by California, and the main aim was the fee was unlawful. I think that was the thing that was actually done, right? And it was issued today, June 8, 2026. And the result is all the states won on every count, and the fees, vacated, basically cancelled in entirety across nationwide. So this is a quick summary. And so how did they really win, right? I mean, the basic argument was, that it's a tax, and president does not have the authority to add additional tax. So first of all, the logic was, is it a tax or a penalty, right? If it's a penalty, you usually punishment is given or a fee is given for something that is done illegal. So hiring an H1B worker is perfectly legal. It is statutory, and as per U.S. Congress, right? Basically, based on that, it's definitely not a penalty. So it is a tax. If it's not a penalty, then it is a tax. And this is also based on some of these Supreme Court rulings. That's what they say. And who holds the taxing power? Only the Constitution gives the taxing power to U.S. Congress, right? So where basically representatives from all the states make the laws and all of that, right? And president can only tax if the Congress clearly hands him that power in a law. So, and does the immigration law give that to him? No. The INA, which is the immigration law, it gave him the authority to restrict our entry. This is something called 212F, right? Where the president has the authority to stop people from coming into the country when he believes that there is a threat of national security, whatever, based on this discussion he can do. But that does not give this authority to tax, such large amounts, right? So that is what the key argument was. And the other counts that they really argued was that there is no legal authority for the amount, right? So, I mean, $100,000, is like a significant amount, and it doesn't really, you can only do adjudication fee. You can't just, put on a big number like that and justify that to cover the cost. So it doesn't have any legal basis for such large. So that's the second one. And the other one they used was you skip the required process, right? So usually what happens is anything that is significantly huge like this should have to go through something called a notice of comment and public comments, and you get that feedback and do all of that, right? So the agencies basically skipped this process after the proclamation came in. They just implemented it And also, the last count was basically arbitrary and capricious. Essentially, you need to follow a particular process. It should be logical, all of that, right? And you can't really like just directly, put like that, right? So that is what it is, essentially, in layman's terms. And they ignored all of these things, and then they, it hit all these schools. So, although the way they framed the case is the states argument was that this fee hurts real people and public, and usually whenever there is harm, right, or some kind of bad things that happen or it impacts people, that's when a case usually goes to a court, and that's how the argument usually shapes up. And in this context of this case, they used the schools, right? It's become hard for them to hire public school teachers because there are a lot of teacher shortages. Usually, what happens is, for bilingual, some teachers, right, where they can't get enough talent, so they basically come from outside of the country, of outside the US, and they sponsor H1Bs for them. So schools are having challenges, and universities are also having huge challenge because researchers and all of them, they don't have that kind of talent to fill all the posts there. So that is why it's also universities have been impacted, and with H1B stopped, so the doctors, already, the medical system is in a lot of strain, and with fewer H1B, there is no doctors coming in. So all of these are impacting public, and it's creating harm. And the court also rejected the government's defenses, like courts can't review visa decisions. I mean, essentially, that's what it's usually national security. That's the argument they do. But here it says it's not a single visa denial. They're looking at the entirety, how it's going to change. So that is how it's been positioned, right? So all of these, what you said, the president doesn't has sweeping power. So these are all some of the defenses done. This is just a regulatory payment, not a tax. All of these were arguments by the government, supporting the rule. But basically, the plaintiffs, essentially, all the states argued that, the power has limits. It cannot be taxed like that. Only US Congress can do that. And the court said, it is not a, you can't really like, just take that. It's a huge tax. It is not just processing fee. So all of these are what has been framed, so that they were able to win the case. And what it does is, it is basically going to vacate the rule nationwide. Vacated means the rule itself is technically removed. It is not just blocked across this 40, 20 states, whatever that's sued. Usually that's the way the language is structured. But when it says vacated, it's completely taken out. It means that it's completely nationwide removed. And so that means anybody who's subject to this now are not subject to this anymore as per that, right? So this is going to be a big relief for healthcare sectors that rely on H1B talent. And also they say that this policy is unlawful, and there is no injunction needed because these guys requested for an injunction as well, plaintiffs, yeah? And regarding the refunds of who already paid, they said, I don't think that really addresses that part, so we'll have to see. Now, there was also another court opinion that came in late December of last year. So that was a Chamber of Commerce case. So both of them looked at the 100,000 fee and they ruled in opposite direction. So this is where it gets very, very tricky, right? So is it a fee or a tax? The Chamber of Commerce said no, treat it as valid entry restriction or not a tax. Here, they said it is a tax since hiring H1B workers is legal. So Chamber of Commerce said presidential power has the power and payment is authorized. Here they said there is no power. They only lets him restrict the entry because it does not allow the tax. And Administrative Procedure Act is where you have to follow all the procedures and did not validate. So basically, the Chamber of Commerce did not validate on the APA grounds, right? Here, they did validate on that. They said they didn't follow the APA ground. That's why it's been declared it's not done. So here in this Chamber of Commerce case, the government won. Here, the 20 states won. And currently, the Chamber of Commerce case is in appeals right now. There is no summary judgment here, right? So it's on appeal currently, what's happening there. And the California one also, comment is expected to appeal quickly. So again, we just got the judgment, so we'll have to see. So again, these are summary judgments. What happens when these kinds of things come in? It's kind of tricky, right? How the whole thing will be interpreted and who does what. So we'll have to wait and see what will really pan out of this, right? So if many of these come contradictory, then, it's probably going to the Supreme Court. That is what will happen. And also, it's going to basically, we're toward the end of close to September, so we don't know what will happen to that, right? So what happens next, right? Now that it is there. So first things first, the White House said it disagrees and it was going to appeal, which is essentially what most of them do, right? So they'll appeal very soon. And they're going to use this particular case and go for appeal. And also there is another case that's pending, so we'll have to see what that will come out. So if there are conflicted decisions like this, then it will probably end up in Supreme Court, right? So we'll have to see what that. So the fees was anyway set to expire in September. So we'll have to see. See, all in all, right, I mean, as it stands today, we don't have any official guidance from USAS or DHS on this. So we'll have to wait and see how they will interpret this. But as per this ruling that has come out, you're not subject to the $100,000 fee. But the previous one said it was. So how they will interpret and what will come out, this kind of still developing story. We don't know what really would come out. So just stay tuned, and then we'll see what will happen. So that's what. So the key takeaway, right, as of today, the federal judge Boston has struck down $100,000 fee, and it says it's an unlawful tax. And the main reason is that it's only Congress can put tax. Immigration never gave president that power, and also APA violations and all of that. They said that there is no legal authority for such a large amount, right? Skipping public rulemaking and all sorts of things. And 20 states also won because it's harm to the public schools, universities, and all of that. And it's nationwide impact, right? Because it's not just for the 20 states, for all of that. So we don't know what that refund will look like. So it's not over yet. We may expect the government will basically appeal. So it's going to be very tricky how all of these things will play out. We'll wait for the directions from USCIS and DHS. Then only we would know what is actually in effect. So that's it, folks. So again, this is big news. You see these all over the place. This basically we took a deeper to look at what actually looks there. So do subscribe for getting regular updates on these kind of things, anything that happens to immigration. Also, you can check the links in description for more information. Thank you. Thank you for watching.